Washington State, Oregon, and California. All right, let's talk about social media. Of course, when anything big happens anywhere on the globe, oftentimes we get to see it first or hear about it first through Twitter or Facebook. Nicole Karkic joins us now with an idea of what we are seeing on Twitter, for example. What can you tell us? Any chatter?
Well, you know what, Gary, a lot of people have been tweeting just what happened. At first, it was an 8.0 magnitude earthquake. Then it was upgraded to 8.2. But a couple of pictures that I found, this one in Chile, you can see people are evacuating buildings. So just a lot of mayhem that you can sort of pick up from this image right here. Another one that I found on Twitter was from Nancy. She said a restaurant by the seashore is burning after a powerful 8.2 magnitude quake hit. So we're going to definitely see more images like this. This also has been making the rounds on Twitter. It's a tsunami propagation forecast. So to break it down for you, sort of hard to understand, you can see right here, this is the color scale of where we're seeing the highest wave heights. So anything red close to Chile, as you can imagine, where those tsunami warnings are in place, very high. But even as you get right here down towards New Zealand, we're still going to see some very high waves as this is traveling. So a certain situation over there. A lot of tweets like this, people saying that they want to pray for people in Chile. We're definitely keeping them on our minds. And this one, a newspaper reporting a collapsed highway. So we're going to keep track of what's going on social media. Also, we'll upgrade you on those tsunami warnings. Here's Gary with more.
Yeah, and of course, things just exploding now. I'm looking at some of the notes that I've been taking, just looking online at a Chilean reporter saying that the dispatch in terms of moving people from the coast has been somewhat orderly because Chileans go through this quite a bit.
That's right, and so that's certainly good to hear. You can get perspective on social media of how it's looking too. This is in Chile. You can see a little bit of mayhem, but people are evacuating buildings. Looks to be orderly, as Gary said, at this point. We take you to this shot right here. You can see a couple of shots that Nancy tweeted. She said people on the street, a lot of people just waiting to see what's going on. I'm sure very jilting at this point. This also from Nancy, a restaurant by the seashore. Powerful earthquake causing a fire. So unfortunately, things like this going on in the wake of this quake. And we take you this shot right here. Someone tweeted that already, of course, schools canceled in Chile because of the earthquake. This also making the rounds on Twitter. The propagation forecast you can see right here marked in the colors. Anywhere in red, seeing very high waves. That's where the tsunami warnings are in place. But as it travels towards New Zealand, we still will see some very high waves there indicated in the yellow. We're going to take you now to Gary again with more details on this earthquake.
All right, once again, 8.2. We're watching it social media with Nicole Karkic. We'll keep you abreast of that situation. Of course, let's get an update on social media with Nicole Karkic.
Thanks, Gary. And there are no watches or warnings for BC or California at this point in terms of tsunamis. And as we take you to a look at images, this is pretty impressive. You can see the huge evacuations happening in Chile, sort of an aerial perspective of that. Unfortunately, a lot of this also on social media, the fires that are breaking out because of the earthquakes. Here's another one, this one in Chile, on the Pacific coast. Now, also a couple of other tweets, people saying, a lot of people actually saying that they're just thinking about people. They did tweet about where you can get more information on the latest if you want for the tsunami watches and warnings in place. So go to NOAA's National Weather Service. Their Pacific Tsunami Warning Center will give you all the latest details. We'll also have them here on the Weather Network. And of course, Gary has more on that.
Here to give us an update, Nicole Karkic.
All right, well, Gary, on Twitter, the reports that are coming out is that at this point there have been no major injuries, so that's good to hear, but we're seeing just a lot of evacuations. So people are used to this in the area. Apparently it's been very orderly, but quite a bit of mayhem in terms of the amount of people funneling through. Unfortunately, a couple of these images coming out of what is going on exactly at this point with all of those watches and warnings for tsunamis still in place. A couple of tweets from people coming through. If you want any of the latest details on the warnings and watches that are in place, you can head to the NOAA website and it will give you a perspective of what exactly is going on. Also, we'll give you those too. Here's Gary with more.
Just to recap, 8.2, that's very strong, obviously. This information via social media. There's my partner, Nicole Karkic. What can you tell us?
All right, so Gary, we're just starting off with a Google Maps view of exactly where these warnings are in place. So all along this coast here, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, we've got all the way into People are saying that this is being done in an orderly fashion. They're used to doing this, so definitely good news to hear that. And there have been no immediate reports of any major injuries. But again, a better sense here of all the people sort of huddling in the streets, waiting to hear what is going on exactly and what the next move is, and probably waiting to hear when these watches and warnings will be dropped. Here's Gary with more on the earthquake.
All right, what we've been seeing from Twitter, here's Nicole Karkic.
All right, Gary, thanks so much. We're going to head to this website right now. This is USGS, and it gives you an indication of the aftershocks that we've been seeing. A lot of people tweeting about that point. Size-wise, it's been 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, so similar in size, less intensity, of course, but still a lot of aftershocks being felt. And images coming out of social media like this, people evacuating buildings, trying to understand what's going on. And you can see within about 21 hours, it's going to be close to Australia, so it will have a ripple effect with still some waves around Australia and New Zealand as we head into the next 20 to 21 hours. Here's Gary with more on that.
What do the pictures suggest via social media? Here to answer that question, Nicole Karkic.
All right, Gary, we'll start it off by going to the USGS website, and they're mapping out where the aftershocks are going on. So a lot of people tweeting about that. At least 9 major aftershocks at this point, the strongest being 6.2 marked in this orange dot right here. But the blue one, that's the initial 8.2 shock. So you can see there has been a lot of ripple effect because of this. The tsunami watches and warnings in place, as Gary was mentioning, and these are the people evacuating the building. So getting a nice aerial shot of what has been going on. A better perspective here of all the people sort of congregating, coming together, sort of high waves where all those watches and warnings are in effect. But notice that over time, it's eventually going to reach around New Zealand. So they're going to see very strong waves eventually within the next 20 to 24 hours. Here's Gary with more.
Here's Nicole Karkic with an update.
All right, Gary, well, I just found this picture on Twitter. Right now, it's just past 11:30 p.m. Local time in Chile for April 1st, their Tuesday evening. And you can see right here this image. As Gary mentioned, people are being evacuated now. Now, the ripple effect the tsunami is going to have is shown right here on this map. And you can see anywhere marked in red is going to be the highest wave heights. But that will extend all the way towards New Zealand as we head into the next 20 to 24 hours. So it is a certain situation on the ground. Here, now we turn to Gary with more.
Story, Nicole, obviously it's been blowing up on Twitter.
That's right, Kim. A lot of people have been tweeting. I've been seeing a lot about reports of the aftershocks, and at this point there's been a dozen, very large in nature, the highest reported at 6.2. This is an indication from USGS of all of the aftershocks. The blue is the 8.2, the initial large one, but you can see there's been a lot of aftershocks after that. This is the fault line that the earthquake is right beside. So we're going to continue to have reports of these aftershocks through the night and through the next couple of months as well. So as people are trying to get to higher ground, they're still going to feel some shakes. Right now, as Kim mentioned, Chile, Peru in the warning, but a lot of the areas have been dropped out. We take you to this shot in Chile. It is after 11:30 p.m. their local time. You can see completely deserted streets, people getting to higher ground, getting to safety, and up, and you can see another one right here. But Kim, as you mentioned, no immediate reports of damage. Here's Kim with more on active weather in our country.
Nicole, that officials are worried about happening for coastal British Columbia. They don't know when, of course, but this is the kind of magnitude that they're thinking may occur at some point.
You're right, but thankfully at this point there have been no tsunami watches or warnings for BC as a ripple effect for this. But yeah, we're going to have to wait to see if something like that does happen in the future for British Columbia. Out of Chile, these are the images we're seeing. Lots of fires at this point have been sort of strewn across Twitter. Another example right here, and you can see another one right here. But at this point, there has been no reports either of significant major damage. Now, Kim had mentioned 2 reported deaths from Chilean officials, also 3 injuries, and people sort of huddling around, getting to higher ground, getting out of buildings. A lot of evacuations happening in terms of what's going on in Chile. But now let's look at our weather. That's right. And they are also, of course, in the Pacific Ring of Fire, so prone to it, definitely. And if we take you to a shot of the USGS site, you can see the fault line right here, which is going to help spark off those earthquakes. And these are all the aftershocks that they've seen. The most of note aftershock has been 6.2, but definitely this will continue into the overnight and for the next couple of months as well. So as people are getting to higher ground, they're feeling some rumbles, some slight rumbles at that. This is Nancy, who mentioned that Chilean Interior Minister says armed forces dispatched after 300 prisoners reportedly escape Iquique prison after the earthquake. So always hear reports of this after earthquakes happen for some reason, but this has been a report from the Chilean Interior Minister. So a lot is going on. People outside of buildings after evacuating had 3 injury reports at this time as well. We'll have more on this ahead, but right now, our weather. That's certainly right. And Kim, at this point for tsunami warnings, as you mentioned, just Chile as well as Peru. But this was a tweet from CNN. Pacific Tsunami Warning Center director says he's still evaluating whether to issue tsunami warnings for Hawaii after 300 prisoners reportedly escaped prison after the earthquake. So a little bit of mayhem on the ground. And as far as what's on the ground, well, this is in Chile. This was posted just after 11:30 p.m. their time locally, and you could see the streets were completely deserted. People are sort of evacuating buildings, getting to higher ground. That is certainly the latest. Travel over the next 24 to 48 hours. Now here's Kim with more on our active weather in the east.
In the world, seeing a massive one back in 2010 of 8.8.
That's right. And you know what, Kim, as we know, Chile, Peru, really right in that Pacific Rim of Fire where they can see a lot of these earthquakes. They're close to a fault line. And so prone to it, of course. As we take a look at the images coming out of the area, so we're seeing images like this, fires happening in a couple of buildings. Here another look, and at this point, and we will give you more updates on what's going on there, as well as the warnings still in place. But first, let's talk about our weather here at home.
Of that one. So 8.2 is major, Nicole. Obviously, it's one of the biggest we'll see. Probably we see this once a year, but thankfully nothing too bad coming out of this at this point.
That's right, Kim. We've only heard of the 2 fatalities at this point, 3 injuries as well. So hopefully those numbers stay down. But a look at the people evacuating Iquique prison after the earthquake. So a little bit of mayhem in some areas. Sometimes that's to be expected after earthquakes, of course. This is a city street, buildings waiting for the latest watches and warnings. And as far as the tsunami travel times, pretty interesting shot right here. This has made the rounds on Twitter. You can see from Chile within the next 3 hours, and then 6, and then eventually by the time we get into 21 hours post the quake, it's going to be around Australia. So feeling some waves there. And yes, as Kim mentioned right now, that advisory for Hawaii. We'll now talk about our weather here at home.
World seeing a massive one back in 2010 of 8.8.
That's right. And you know what, Kim, as we know, Chile, Peru, really right in that Pacific Rim of Fire where they can see a lot of these earthquakes. They're close to a fault line, and so prone to it, of course. As we take a look at the images coming out of the area, British Columbia is no stranger to earthquakes. A new research puts Vancouver at the heart of some very unsettling seismic activity. A study from the University of British Columbia has revealed future quakes in the urban center could be worse than originally thought. A combination of sediment and dense rock beneath the city could actually amplify the strength of a quake. And researchers are using an interesting analogy to paint this scientific picture. The ripple effect could intensify a magnitude 4 earthquake to a magnitude 7, making for longer and stronger tremors. Findings from the study will likely be used to reevaluate building codes to prevent infrastructure damage in the case of a major quake. And here's the thing, that was Chris St. Clair when he was in Vancouver and then went up towards Port Alberni at one point. But the interesting thing this week is that we are in the 50th anniversary of a major earthquake that happened in Alaska that impacted Port Alberni. This is a shot that I found on Twitter from 1964. You can see the damage in the region from a major earthquake there. It destroyed over 300 buildings. You can see off the northwest coast there, and definitely tsunami, this was a huge story, making headlines on Twitter. So lots of images were coming out of the region, such as this. It dropped down to just Chile and Peru, and an advisory was issued for Hawaii as well, for the threat of potentially tsunamis. Now, this was also in Chile, a capture on Twitter and we'll take you to another shot as well. Nancy got online and showed us all these people sort of waiting maybe to hear if family and friends were okay. The latest word in terms of fatalities was 5 people, also numerous injuries. But in terms of major structural damage, we haven't heard anything on that. However, I do want to show you some of the shots of the fires that were seen strewn across the area. Another sort of interesting story that came up on Twitter. Chilean Interior Minister says armed forces were dispatched after 300 prisoners reportedly escaped Iquique prison after the earthquake. So a little bit of mayhem happening there. From what I understand, they had rallied in a couple of the prisoners in the evening time. So hopefully this will be settled into the morning time. But when people get into the morning, well, school closures across the board, that's certainly the state there. And the tsunami propagation forecast looks like this. So this just gives you a sense of the scale in terms of how high the wave heights can be. Anywhere marked in red is the highest. But then as it starts to travel into the next day, we're going to be seeing regions like New Zealand being affected by some large waves as well.
Now that it's officially April, we can start talking about spring and rain. April showers. A lot of people are talking about it on social media today. April showers bring mud. I agree, George. You should see my backyard. It's all mud. No grass, just mud. Perfect for rain boots. So cute. Yes, spring showers, April showers bring out the rain boots. A huge yard cleanup. Agreed. That goes along with the mud, I think. April showers would be nice if they brought coffee to help you with the cleanup. Yeah, I agree as well. I think that we've opted for April snow here in the east. Yeah, I agree. They're still seeing winter. The weather. Now, the good news is that we're going to see high pressure today throughout southern Ontario.